But I am Paula Fontana. I lead global marketing here at Illuminer, and I'm joined here by Mike Geyer. You want to say a few words about yourself, Mike?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, hi, I'm Mike Geyer. I'm a director at BDO USA and work in our forensics data analytics group. I've kind of been in technology and risk management for the last like 22 years. So, kind of aging myself here a little bit, but that's okay. But really love talking about the space. Love collaborating with Paula and talking big ideas. So, really happy to be having this conversation. A little late in our day, but always jump to the conversation whenever Paula wants to invite me in. So really happy to be talking to everybody tonight. Or I was going to say we're global here, so wherever you may be. So we have some Texas folks. So hopefully, if people want to put in the chat where they're kind of dialing in from, that'd be
Yeah,
great. I'm
yeah,
sure
that would
we
be
got some
amazing.
folks as well.
Yeah. So the focus of today's session, is a series of 6 roundtables that we've been doing on different lenses of risk. This one's really focused on global compliance. So the inspiration behind this was really a lot of the feedback that we've been garnering from the community around the myriad of requirements and how to make sense out of all of that in a way that is replicable and extensible in your organization. And really kind of getting into sort of from the trenches perspective, like how do you make some of the new evolving expectations that are coming out of the world's regulators really actionable for your organization. But super curious about as people are chiming in here in the chat, and good to see you, Gwen. Again, I think you joined the last roundtable, but if there's specific things that you're super keen to talk about, like I think it's open discussion, so we can take this conversation any which way you guys want. Um, but it looks like we've got folks joining from the US and from Australia so far. So this is great. So let's start off maybe here with as we wait for people to sort of weigh in. I always like to start off with Marcus calls it start off with a bang. But but a little bit of a different bang, not a micro simulation, but maybe a question. So if you don't mind joining our interactive polling, we use menti.com. So you can either scan the QR code with your phone, or you can enter the code 41973648, and that'll take you straight to the poll. But our first question is, how confident are you that your critical response plans align with matrixed compliance regulations? And so the options are very, somewhat, or not at all. What are you seeing with your clients, Mike? Like how do you think on the whole most clients would answer this?
I think we're seeing kind of, I think what everyone is gravitating towards is the somewhat zone.
Yeah.
So I think what we're seeing is people have had a little bit of time with some of the kind of the early kind of the leader regulations in the space. So things like the PRA coming out of the UK. And really, kind of being able to digest those and kind of get on top of some of those early leader regulations and getting their kind of feet under them on those. But the rest of the world is catching up and kind of making sure that everyone is, kind of aligning to those different nuances that are geographically particular is, that's where people are kind of tripping over themselves
Yeah.
right now. And we don't want to get back into the old world of really, or for a lot of organizations, the current world of really kind of duplicate compliance. So double dipping on your compliance and really spending time and money to double comply for things where if we kind of take a smart approach and really look at that matrix compliance where 80% crossover. So if we do one sort of control in the space, it probably covers 90% of all of the regulations around the world. So really kind of taking that let's take a breath. Let's see where we are exposed, what geographies we're exposed to, and what regulations, and kind of align our control matrix to that, and seeing where we can get leverage on our spend, because we don't want to be kind of overspending where we don't need to.
Yeah.
So that's where we're really helping our customers. Take that pause. Let's do a little bit of analysis, and then make a plan to go forward.
Yeah. But I think a key thing to remember here too is that you're never starting from zero, that you have inherent capability that exists within your organization to start from. And the better you understand that as a starting point, it really helps you hone your prioritization in such a way that you're able to attack kind of the problem at hand. Because like you say, there with the myriad of requirements, and looking at what needs to be solved now versus what needs to be solved later. Obviously, the timeline for those requirements is one thing, but also looking at it from the perspective of what have we already done? What are we sufficiently capable of, and how can we effectively grow our capability in line the expectations of the regulatory community. I think there's also an element of learning. I know we've been talking about this for years, right? Like we're all learning together. I know Art Lindo came out a couple of years ago and said, look, like no one has the secret sauce to this. And that's part of the beauty and the challenge of resilience, is that we're constantly learning how to be better together. And so I think there's that aspect of not only learning within the institution, but also being able to benchmark and share, across not only industry, but also within the broader ecosystem.
Absolutely, and every organization is slightly different, right? And we kind of talk about them as living and kind of organic, and every organization kind of grew in its own way, and then you pile on the changing landscape of all of these different organically changing regulations. So each organization is a little bit unique. And what we're talking about is different groups within an organization probably owned some of these early leader regulations. So your UK division might have owned the PRA, the leading UK regulations. And they might have been kind of tasked with compliance on that, like early out of the gate, 5 years ago. So like, oh, this is a you problem, go fix it. But now come 5 years later, it's oh shoot, that's an us problem. You guys already have the answer for 80% of the world. Now we all want to like copy kind of what you did, but now at the same time, we want to kind of leverage that across everything. So being able to learn from within your organization how they challenge problems and overcame them, but then also replicate that across your entire organization, and then really kind of take that higher level look and be able to use the leverage that you have to kind of have things count twice or hopefully 10 times across. So if you have a control in place, have it count for every regulation that you have to comply with. In some cases, we've put controls in place that do that, and that's great, and that's the kind of the holy grail, right? So you have a single control that complies for all global regulations, and that's where if you do kind of take that most stringent regulation approach. So if you always kind of try to comply to the most strict regulation, that's where you can kind of do that. So it's really, really difficult to do this if you don't have technology to help support that. So, really to try to track, test, comply, report, analyze, visualize. You cannot do this without technology. it would take an army of analysts to go and do this and use Excel and put this all together and do all the interviews. I'm a huge fan of using technology platforms. You know that, Paula. So and for everybody else on the call, I'm a huge nerd. I love to use technology. All of my solutions are and all of my engagements are always technology driven. My main goal is to hopefully that you don't. I kind of source myself out of my own job so that you don't need me anymore. So I put together a really robust platform that supports you in your work, and I can walk away, and you are a successful customer. That in my book. So using technology to really support your business processes. That's what I'm kind of looking for.
Yeah, so you've often talked about, I see Sydney's on the call too. So Sydney, feel free to chime in here too. You and Sydney often talk about the value of a scrimmage, or kind of putting, like it's almost akin to in fact, I have a slide about this. It's not in this deck though. The 6-year-old soccer team, and you put him out in the field, and you know what, like Jimmy's doing great, like he doesn't need a lot of work, but Bob over here, there's some skills he needs to work on. It really helps you identify kind of where you need to hone your response capability. You want to talk a bit about how you do that at BDO?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we really love exercising, kind of at all levels. So, we think it's, really kind of one of our best tools for building resilience within your teams, building the muscle memory for, what to do when things do go wrong. And also just, kind of building the strength amongst a team. And a kind of really identifying the leaders that you do have on your team, which is really important. So the situation that Paula described is really kind of early onset when you're kind of starting off on your resilience journey. So, say just throwing problems at the team. So, before you've even really kind of set out a plan, or you don't have a program, we can pose problems to the team and say, what would you actually do? And it's really kind of crowdsourcing that, kind of those solutions. So my grandpa always said, like, water finds all the cracks and flows downhill. It's like, this is what we would actually do. And if the dam were to break, this is where we would go. This is what we would actually do. So, this is, a way to understand how the team would intuitively find the solutions to things. And we keep refining that. And that's how you can then build out your plan. So then as your teams change and, you can refine those over time, but you can continue to use those same concepts of exercising and coaching over time, because, with the same metaphor, with great athletes, and with the Olympics coming up, here we go. Even the most elite athletes have coaches, because you continue to hone those skills as you get better and better and better. So don't ignore your leaders either. So you really want to make sure that you're coaching and honing your leaders in this space as well, so that they understand that when bad things happen, they have the authority and the kind of wherewithal to make those decisions in the moment under pressure.
Yeah, I've heard that referred to as the chilling effect, especially among our compliance customers. They often talk about the chilling effect of the emotion in crisis, and so how do you put the people in the moment before the moment happens, to instantiate more of that muscle memory for response. Curious, another question for this group, and all that are on the call, feel free to jump in with your own perspectives. This is super interactive, but yeah, just curious about how often your organization conducts compliance reviews of your critical response strategies. So, how often are you checking in? I think one thing that we're all seeing absolutely is all the change that's happening in the world and emergent threat. So, a lot of ambiguity around, how to respond in some of these situations, right? And like, what is a compliant way of responding to an event that is sort of outside the bounds of what we even imagined, right? There's new possibilities in terms of, what technology can do in the way of deep fake, in the way of, really simulating reality. And we're to a point where it's really even just difficult to discern, truth versus fiction. So I think, thinking through, or even like some of the regulations that are coming out by way of governing AI at the societal level, and how that, how that ultimately distills to your institutional policy and the standards that you hold for your team or for your third parties. I think all of that is really evolving quite quickly. In fact, I was talking with Marcus Vaughn, the co-founder of Illuminar, and we were remarking that, I don't think a lot of organizations are necessarily aware of with the EU AI Act. There's a mandate that your employees need to be trained on AI in terms of the risks involved in using AI, or just having a level of awareness in terms of what's possible. How do you discern, what is a compliant response, or what is an effective response to some of these novel scenarios? How are you seeing that with your customers, Mike?
Yeah, no, I think what we're really trying to do, first of all, is making sure that everyone has a strong AI policy in place. A lot of customers are just kind of getting to that point. So, helping coach and making sure that they, really have a formal policy that everyone's been trained on, and making sure that, people understand, kind of what is okay and what's not okay. Then we are also, having having people understand that, what that which tools are safe to use. So, kind of having them understand that which tools are company approved, tools to use. So, like as an example, we have internal AI tools that we're allowed to use here at BDO. And then, there are tools that we're not allowed to use. Like I'm not allowed to go in and just use ChatGPT. We have, internal tools for that we own, that we monitor, that we, control. So, I think that, that is the important step, is making sure that people understand that using those external tools, this is such a new space. It is a black box. You don't know how these companies operate. You don't know how these tools work. These models are very new. These companies are not being transparent on how they work. This is kind of a very, very new space. So if they copy information into a public model, that's data exfiltration. That's taking very private company data and moving it into a public space. So making sure that people understand that that is what they are doing if they are to do that, and that kind of violates your codes of conduct and your privacy understanding of what is okay and what is not okay. So that's really where we're helping our customers, is guiding them to strong policies, making sure people are trained in a way that's easy to understand, but also still like giving people safe spaces. So helping people enable safe space tools that that they can use and kind of experiment and find good uses for AI, because Pandora's out of the box. AI is here to stay. But we're not going to be able to kind of undo this at this point. And also just kind of like putting it out there. So we are all very much talking about ChatGPT and generative AI from a language and a text perspective. But all of our industries are being touched by other AI. So data mining AI is in the scientific realm, protein folding, molecule creation. So for drug development, chemical development, structural engineering, building development, construction. All of these industries are being vastly transformed as we speak. And this is sort of the other side of AI that we don't talk about. So this is all also introducing risk and kind of new ideas into all of these different industries.
So I pulled this survey up that was just released in May. This is a collaboration between Microsoft and LinkedIn. Some of these statistics I find are so astounding when you think about where we were. 75% of people are already using AI at work. 46% of them started using it less than 6 months ago. And I think this speaks to, being able to keep up with the pace of change. This I thought was fascinating. 78% of AI users, to your point about policy, like you can have a policy that says you're prohibited from using Gen AI tools within your organization, but chances are your people are probably ignoring it. And this is a finding that they're seeing across the demographic groups, whereby you may be using on a personal device, right? Because people are ultimately seeing this as an advantage in terms of their productivity, in terms of their creativity in work. And quite frankly, like a lot of people are concerned, as we know, like if you don't do it, are you setting yourself up for a disadvantage in the sense that you don't necessarily have those skills to make yourself relevant in the workplace of the future? So I think these are all key considerations as we put together not only policy, but also the right controls to ensure and training to ensure that people are aware of the gotchas involved in using some of these solutions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it continues to creep into everything we do. So, even right now, I am subtly using AI. So the fact that my background is being blurred is technically image AI. So the fact that I can kind of like shift back and forth and that my video is being edited in real time is a form of AI. So all of this tooling, all of this huge computing advancement is coming in everywhere. And with kind of Apple's announcements at their huge at their World Developer Conference a few 2 weeks ago, with them pushing it out to everyone, there's going to be kind of no escape, right? So everyone will be using this come fall. Everyone's grandparents, my mom. So there's going to be there's going to be no escaping it. So the fact that the adoption has been so lightning fast is the thing that scares me a little bit. Nothing in my lifetime has ever kind of happened so quickly as the adoption of AI.
Yeah, and usually, it becomes more of a slowly than all at once. And there's a process of the figuring out that happens along the way, but due to the rapid pace of, some of these newer technologies, becoming available, we're sort of learning as we go. To your point, this was another interesting statistic, kind of going back to the challenges around training and empowering your people to be in the driver's seat, as it relates to whether it's AI or whether it's some of these other emergent situations that we're seeing around cybersecurity or even the environment. More than this is a statistic from Gartner, more than 40% of employees say that compliance training doesn't really help them do their job better. And I think this connects kind of what we're seeing from a there's my job and what I need to do from a business perspective, but then how do I do that in a way that is compliant? Whereas most compliance trainings are one size fits all, stand and deliver. You watch the video, and there might be a few questions, and either you pass or fail. But I think the reality of critical response or making decisions is that, like, it's done in a complicated context, right? Um, and um, and it's not always done in a siloed environment, right? Like, you're making decisions in a collective setting, with other individuals involved. And so how do you connect the dots with regard to the insight that you do know, right? That context, that critical context that you can pull into the decision, understand kind of what the expectations are from your organization to be able to do X, Y, and Z, right? And that's why we put together plans and playbooks, right? So we have that list of, when we're essentially interrogating ourselves, like, do I need to do these things, or like asking myself this set of questions, right? And then there's the element of, like, who can help me, or who do I need to connect with to make this happen in a way that is consistent with my obligations in this role. And I
Yep.
think we've seen that pretty consistent, like whether you're, someone on the front line dealing with a customer, whether you're a senior executive, SolarWinds is a great example I always refer to. People don't always know where the guidelines are, because reality isn't as scripted as your compliance training.
Yep. No, 100%. So every time I talk about compliance, and that is kind of a big focus of the what we do with BDO. So that's one of our kind of main focus areas. So we work with a lot of compliance teams. When I'm working with a compliance team, and I always connect it back to kind of three big concepts. Because otherwise you're never going to move the needle. Like you said, you're never going to make this resonate with the person on the end line, the person on the floor that's going to like have to do this. Because at the end of the day, if you're not reaching those people, they're not going to do it, and that's really what we need to do. We need to enact behavior. So we got to do the with them. What's in it for me? If you're not describing what you want them to do in a way that makes it resonate for them, that they get some value out of it too, they're not going to do it. So you always have to kind of describe what you want the outcome to be in a way that it makes them feel like they're included, and that they get some value out of it as well. So they need to be connected to the idea. You need to explain the why. We always skip over that. We just say you have to do, this is what you have to do, and we miss the why. You have to explain the why to people, and you have to make it super easy. If you want to have people be compliant to things, remove as many barriers as you possibly can. So that's where something like Luminar comes into place, is that you can tailor the messaging to each group specifically. You can make the messaging interactive, and you can have the messaging be really engaging and understand the why. You don't have to train them on all of our lingo. We talk about risk management and BIA and throwing out all of these acronyms. Just say, hey, I want you to like kind of run through a couple activities. I want you to meet and talk about some ideas. I'm really here to help you. I want to understand what you do, and I want to know how I can help you if something goes, if something bad happens. I want to know how to help you, and I want to make sure that we're doing a couple things that we have to comply for audit purposes. What's the easiest way for us to do these things? This is what I have to do. What's the easiest way for us to accomplish this? And be collaborative about it. Luminar is a great platform to be able to like have that collaboration, make it easy, gather the data, and really make it actionable. So I love, kind of love a technology platform like Luminar.
I'm a mute. I I was trying to get to the slide and I accidentally triggered a micro simulation. So I didn't look myself. I got a little excited. So I think, yeah, I mean, and I love this phrasing that I borrowed from somebody in the community around it being more of a less brain training and more Cracker Barrel logic puzzle. I don't know if there's a parallel in Australia around Cracker Barrel, but they have these, little games that you play at the table. But essentially putting a challenge in front of people that they really hadn't thought of before, and sparking that aha moment, and like really getting to um that insight as quickly as you can, because I think, and we talk a lot about this in risk and resilience, and compliance, like how do you, it goes back to your, what's in it for, what's in it for me, um leading with value before you're asking people for something. And I think that's part of the power of the moment of insight, or the light bulb moment, is that you're giving them that that moment of utility. And then in that moment, they're essentially realizing the benefit of going through a process like this. Like, assume the crisis, because I think we live in a time where, where the crisis is going to happen. It's just a matter of
When,
and
right?
not if.
Yep.
And
But when and how big, right?
yes, exactly.
Yep.
So how are you going to prioritize? And you can have the perfectly scripted technical response. I think like that is actually probably more straightforward. But I think what's more challenging is the management of the actual incident. And if you look at it, like that's where a lot of the risk and the cost sits, is in how is your leadership team making those decisions in a moment of crisis, and how are they drawing from sort of what in terms of the necessary policies and standards, and what's unique to your institution, and what the process is, who do you go to, who can help, and then but then how do you put that into practice in a way that's fluid, and connected to the situation.
No, absolutely. I think totally agree with all of that.
Yeah, and I feel like this, like you say, from a micro simulation perspective, in effect, you're essentially building the playbook of sorts, by putting it into play.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to kind of your analogy about the soccer team, right? So if you kind of see how your teams interact and how they adapt to prompts to problems, and you see how who your natural leaders are, how how they solve problems together, where kind of where they naturally gravitate towards, where the answers lie within the teams. Then you can start making the plans around that, right? So you can say, okay, this person is naturally, going to kind of gravitate to be like the response leader. Okay, we'll designate that person the response leader. Okay, if that person's not available, this person looked like the delegate. Like that was the kind of the second most, the second person, exhibiting the leadership. So let's designate them like the second in command kind of person. And you can kind of start to formulate that plan based on that scrimmage approach that we talked about before. So you can use those different practices. And again, this doesn't have to be like hugely time consuming either, right? So we talk about using you hopefully people are having team meetings and you guys meet with your teams regularly. This could be like 5 minutes at the beginning of the team meeting. Be like, hey guys, what would we do if like you didn't have the access to this application? And just like pose a question out to the team. How would we go about doing that? How would we go about surviving without Outlook for a day? What if we didn't have email for a week? Like, what would we do? What would we really do? And like have people like really think through that for a while, and kind of just like start posing those questions to people and kind of get them thinking in a mindset of resilience, and problem solving together. And you can start to like take notes and build out, some of these different playbooks on what you would actually do if you didn't have access to technology, places, different services, vendors. What happens if BDO is not available to help us, things like that, or those types of ideas. So it doesn't have to be, everybody has to get together for a whole week and we have to make it this huge, huge thing. It can be, kind of something that's we do and, kind of make it, micro, investments over time.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of popularity of whether it's in your executive team meeting or your board meeting, or maybe it's your quarterly business review meeting with your critical vendor, like really injecting this concept of an exercise, as a part of it, a micro simulation, whereby like it's really all about scenario thinking and being able to plan in scenarios and then the what ifs. And I think, I mean, of course, the crisis never happens as if we plan it. Like it's always going to look a little bit different. But I think building the agility to respond, there's an element of transferability there. And I think going back to like the regulators and standards bodies, like that it is, and I'm going to ask another question around this to the group, about, pulling learnings forward. We're constantly learning, as individuals, as organizations, teams, even as, bigger ecosystems. Do you feel like you have the effective mechanisms to learn from maybe where things didn't go so well? I'd be super interested in learning from people on the call, maybe some strategies that they've used to put that into practice. I know we traditionally do this as after action reporting in industry. Sometimes that can be a little heavy. Um, what's been your experiences with that? I mean, you work with all sorts of organizations, Mike.
Yeah, everyone always talks about the after action report. And like you said, they tend to be, big and meaty. And then I feel like we spend a lot of time, and then I feel like they go in a drawer a lot of the times, or they fall on ears that, we just got through something, really big and we don't want to deal with it anymore. Um, so from a after action report, something that I always like to put in there is, actionable steps. So like, what would be a plan for an improvement plan almost, something not just like what went wrong, what went right, but like what can we improve for next time? So, kind of that continuous improvement, the Kaizen kind of thing. I think including that and making sure that that's included in your after action methodology is really important. Making sure that your after action report is not too qualitative, that it is data driven, and make sure that it's at the end of the day, this actually kind of take a pause here. So executives, you got to speak their language. So executives, and this is fiduciary responsibility. If you're in a publicly traded company, they have to only care about three things from a fiduciary responsibility: increased revenue, decreased cost, and decreased risk. And that's really the third one, decreasing risk, is really just getting better at the first two things. So they need to make more money for the company and decrease costs. Those are the things that they have to do as officers of the company. So the more that you can tie to those goals that they have to do, the better. So from coming out of an after action report, if you're just saying kind of like what happened, that's just reporting. If you come back with, hey, this is what happened, and this is what I think we should do in the future. Here's some concrete steps on what I think we should do. And if you want to take it even to the next step, which is what we've done with some customers, is like, here's the investment plan. This is what we should do. And if we were to do this, this is the money we would have saved because of, if this were to happen again, this is what this event cost us. If we were to invest this amount now, we would have saved this amount, on the next event. So if you start to layer in financial information into the way that you look at the way that you report after action information, the more you can do that, the more traction you're going to get with your executive team, and like kind of the internal marketing of the good things that you're doing within your programs.
Yeah, I think that, it is really about shaping the culture into one of continuous improvement. I know we hear a lot of it. I just saw a statistic that, actually this is more around operational efficiency or optimization, but I think it is similarly in that, there's been more mentions, at the board level of kind of that concept of efficiency or optimization, then it's at an all-time high, essentially. So I think, but how do you instantiate that in your organization, I think is a big question mark, for a lot of teams, like looking to do that in a repeatable way when there's always a crisis du jour and, always something to focus on, a million different priorities. I know we've got 15 minutes. What I thought we could do just for fun is pull this all together and really run through a scenario that is more compliance focused, privacy focused in nature. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. Can you guys hear the sound?
In an unsettling breach, a sophisticated hacker has recently infiltrated the Global Health Innovations Hospital network, gaining unauthorized access to an extensive array of security footage. This incident has raised alarms over the potential misuse of sensitive videos. The security systems, initially installed to enhance safety and accountability within the healthcare facility, have inadvertently become the vector for a significant privacy intrusion. The exact intentions of the attacker remain shrouded in mystery, amplifying the distress within the hospital community and beyond.
Hi, Marco. We've suffered a serious cybersecurity breach. An attacker has infiltrated our network and gained access to security footage, specifically targeting videos that capture patients in sensitive situations.
Do we know the extent of the accessed footage?
It's broad, and it gets worse. The attacker didn't just steal the footage. They've used deepfake technology to alter the videos, creating a far more alarming picture than what actually occurred. They're demanding a significant ransom, threatening to release these manipulated videos on social media if we don't comply.
Okay, so there's a couple injects after this one, but we won't play those in the interest of time. So and we can genericize this a little bit. It doesn't have to be.
I've just gotten a call from our.
Hold on. Get this really paused here. So just to recap, we have a hacker that's accessed sensitive security footage from inside the hospital, but it doesn't have to be a hospital. Like, you could put this in the context of your own organization. Sensitive security footage of people, and they've manipulated these videos in such a way, images in such a way that could be compromising to individuals and to the institution. And so as a response team, and I love the scenario in that it was designed by a chief compliance officer at a hospital network. And this is something that they're actively looking at as a community, given, some of the new considerations around deepfake and, the escalating threat of cyber attack and really the myriad of threats that really combine into a compounding event. But as a response team, what I guess what are you thinking of in terms of a first response? And feel free to chime in. Sydney. All right, Mike, what would you do first?
Oh man. Oh, these ones always like freak me out too, because I would just go back to bed. No, just kidding. No, so again, kind of hopefully you have a good cyber team in place. So any deep fakes, we qualify as cyber threats. So kind of activate the cyber team immediately. So that would be sort of my guidance is always activate your cyber pathway first. Yep. So someone said, yep, assemble my cyber management team. Yep. Yep. And get legal and PR in place. Yep. So yeah, so then it's all about isolation and making sure you're getting kind of official channels to start communication and authentication. So this is really interesting. So identifying what's real now is really interesting. So establishing code words with trusted media channels, establishing ways to have secure and encrypted communication with trusted media, trusted communication between different parties is really important, in these different events. So yeah, it's those would be kind of my first steps is get the crisis team, get the cyber team activated, and establish trusted communication pathways.
Yeah, I think this is a great example of how you can use micro simulations as really that brain teaser, if you will, where it can be these short, sharp scenarios. I mean, you can also create more of an extended version of a simulation. There's actually a few injects after this one that build on the scenario, but from a compliance perspective, like understanding the myriad of requirements from a regulatory perspective, what are our policies, what are our controls, and this is a novel event, but you're not starting from zero. And oftentimes it's building on the basics of what you already have in place. And so, we actually deployed this particular scenario at a big healthcare compliance conference. Like it was really pretty profound that some of the reflections, that different institutions had around this particular scenario. I guess what would be some of the key learnings that you would take from this, Mike? I think this is the first time you've seen this particular micro simulation, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I would just yeah, the hyper realistic fakes are they're going to be a problem. They've and they already have been. They've already. I think we've already seen. They've been able to con companies out of multi-million-dollar trades, things like that. We have that story out of Hong Kong. I'm sure there are other stories that have happened. This is certainly a situation of we're pushing the envelope of if we can do it versus if we should do it. But we've done this, throughout our human history, nuclear energy, the computer in general, things like that. So we've sort of always done this. It's just that it's happening very, very fast. So we need to have, again, kind of adaptive response frameworks. Things can't be too rigid. So this is where, building those teams that have the muscle memory of how to adapt to changing and dynamic dynamic ways of understanding problems and sifting through fast changing landscapes of risk and issues is more important than being able to execute a 197-page plan. That's the world we're gravitating towards, because the risk landscape is changing so quickly that building the skills and the muscle memory is much more important. So it's much more like a fluid game of elite soccer, where we need the skills of these players to be able to kind of move about the field very intelligently and coordinated and playing together and kind of understand how to work together, versus I don't know, another sport where it would be like very sequential. But anyway, my metaphor fell apart a little bit, but again, we don't want people to just have to follow step-by-step plans anymore. That's not going to work for this emerging sort of situation that we're facing here. So we kind of the micro simulation, building the muscle memory. This needs to be a continuous behavior where people are really engaging in this thought process, and it starts to become part of the way that they just think at their job, because you don't know when these things are going to happen. It's not going to be a once in a lifetime event. These things are going to start to happen all the time. And they actually are, and you probably don't even know it. And luckily, I think our IT security teams are doing a fairly good job at filtering and protecting us at this point. We're about to hit a pivot point where it's going to be really, really hard to discern what's real and what's not. Unfortunately.
Yeah, just reading some of Cindy's comments. Yeah, I would also confirm that it's in fact a deep fake. I think learning a little bit more about, like, is this factor as a fiction? Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what we were talking about around the importance of training, and just reflecting on, even, I mean, this is a similar event. It happened very recently in London. There was that streak of cyber attacks where lab facilities were shut down, and it turns out that the hackers released private blood test information on the internet. So I think just, what do you do in that scenario in terms of working with patients, the affected patients and providers that were a part of that breach? These things can be very fast moving and also very emotionally charged on the part of those that are affected. So how to navigate some of that effectively is really very important. So so I know we're just about out of time. There's a couple of other things just to close out here, but we really appreciate you joining us today. We have a couple of things. There's an infographic. We talked a lot about the importance of engagement. There's actually a lot of regulations that stress the importance of engagement within your broader organization at the executive level, to the front lines. But this really provides some insight around effective strategies to engage your people. So if you want to scan that, that'll take you directly to that particular artifact. And if you're interested in bringing a microsimulation home to your team completely free, go ahead and scan the QR here, and that'll take you to a form that you can select what microsimulation you're interested in. And it's something that we love to do for organizations that are really interested in bringing emerging risk to life for their organizations before it happens at home. So thank you, Mike. As always, thank you all for joining us today, wherever you are in the world. And we will see you next time.
That's great. Always good to talk to you, Paula.